So this episode begins with two questions in which you need to select the answer. So the first question, you can have $240 guaranteed right now, or you can take a 1 in 4 shot at $1,000, knowing that there's a 75% chance that you'll walk away with nothing. Which one are you taking out of those two? Okay? Now, the second question, it's a separate question now, but follows on from this one. So the second question, you're guaranteed to lose $750, or you can take a gamble where there is a 75% chance you lose $1,000, but there's a 25% chance you lose nothing at all. Which one do you pick in the second question? Okay? Now we know you've got your answers, I've got my answers. We'll address them a little bit later. Because what I'm going to show you is what they actually add up to, depending on what you picked. And there's probably a really good chance that you probably wouldn't have picked this if I had asked you the question directly. The reason this happens is because there's a blind spot that shows up often when we make decisions back to back. Specifically, small decisions back to back. And I'm going to connect this to decisions that you make on your phone probably like 30 minutes ago. So this comes from a paper by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman and published in 1981. And the two questions I ask you are kind of close word for word what they asked the participants in their experiment. So maybe the $240 were worth a lot more back in 1981. But these 150 people that they asked, they weren't given these two decisions, like one decision and then go for a break and then get another decision. They were actually given those two decisions, like on paper, like this question here and then this question here. Make your answer. Yeah, I guess that's right. And they were said, hey, you can look at question 1 and question 2 and then give me your answer. And how did they answer? Okay, so we're back to the green screen now. In the first decision, $240 or a gamble at $1,000. According to the research, 84% of people took the sure $240. People don't like risk when there's a guaranteed gain sitting right there. Makes sense, right? And then in the second decision, a sure $750 loss or a gamble where you might lose $1,000. And according to the research, the opposite happened here. Only 13% of the people took the sure $750 loss. The other 87% gambled instead, choosing the 75% chance to lose $1,000 over the guaranteed $750 loss. If you're kind of catching on here, it's how the questions are framed and the fact that they happen one after each other. But we're going to get to the one after each other later. But if you're like most people in the study, and like me when I read it, you ended up with two picks for the two questions. A sure $240 gain on the first one, and a gamble of $1,000 loss on the second one. And that was the most common answer they found in the study. I might be biased to my own, but they also said it in the paper. Those two outcomes seem like the most sensible outcomes when you ask those questions independently. The thing is, those two decisions don't actually happen separately. If you took a sure $240 on the first one and gambled the $1,000 loss on the second one, you made one combined bet, whether you meant to or not. So you can see you've got the $240 gain and then a 75% chance of a loss at $1,000. So 25% of the time, you would walk away with $240. Great. But 75% of the time, you would walk away with minus $760. Now, if you were not like me and not like the majority of people, and you chose different options for the two questions. So you gambled on the $1,000 gain, but you had a sure $750 loss. 25% of the time, you would walk away with $250, and 70% of the time, you'd walk away with minus $750. And if we look at this here, the most common outcome on either of the two, so 100% of the time, you're actually doing worse than this one. If those decisions are taken as together. There's a $10 difference here between the two outcomes. So then when our researchers, Tversky and Kahneman, presented people with a combined version as one single choice instead of two decisions, the results flipped completely. Every single person picked the combination that's better in every outcome. Like, obvious, right? 0% picked the one that most people actually picked 30 seconds earlier when it was split into two questions. And the paper's own explanation for this is that people don't naturally check whether two separate choices, each reasonable on their own, might combine into something they'd never actually agree to. Both decisions get evaluated in isolation, and the connection between them just doesn't occur to most people, unless someone forces them to view that connection. So this was some contrived gamble in a classroom in 1981. Whether anything like this actually happens in real life is a little bit contested, because here we're all talking on the same basis of, it's just money, two consecutive things. But you can make an argument that if there are two decisions that you have to make, where the grounds of them are different, then it might change things a little bit. But I think I thought of an example that might fit on this. So I'll let Green Screen Bianca explain this a little better. Okay, so think about how you look at your screen time at the end of the day and you're like, damn, why did I reach 4, 5, 6, 7 hours on my phone when you didn't actually plan to? Because there's rarely a decision in our day-to-day life where we are like, now I am going to have some scroll time. I'm just going to sit here and scroll on my phone. That we don't really carve time out for that. Yeah, maybe before bed you give yourself 15 minutes, but for the amount of screen time that you spend scrolling during a day, it's not an active choice. Or it seems like it's not an active choice. And how it usually happens is you pick up your phone because you get an email, and then you respond to it. And then your fingers are right there, you hit Instagram. And then you get a Slack message, and then you need to respond to that. And then you're like, okay, I did the Slack thing. Let me just check Instagram quickly, the stories, are there any new ones? Then you put your phone down, and then you get a WhatsApp from someone, you're like, okay, let me just answer that. And that was 2 hours since you picked up your phone. Not really, we all know that. And you pick it up, and then you find yourself on Instagram again, or TikTok, or Facebook, whatever you use. YouTube Shorts, you find yourself picking up the phone just because you did one thing, you got stuck into doing another thing. And I'm not going to talk about the behavioral grasping of Instagram trying to keep your attention. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the decision-making process that we make. Because every one of those decisions that you picked up your phone to look at your email or a Slack or a WhatsApp message, they were reasonable in isolation. But none of what actually happened in that interaction was chosen as a combined thing. You made a decision to open the email and look at the email. But then you also found yourself in Instagram, and then you're sitting on the app for 40 minutes in an app you didn't intend to open. And we all know, feeling worse afterwards. Because if someone had put that deal in front of you and said, open your email and then spend 40 minutes on Instagram, you probably would have said, no, I'm not going to make that decision. It's not an effective use of my time in the middle of a workday. But in life and in how we are living now, and this actually applies to quite a few things, especially decisions that happen like consecutively, that don't necessarily depend on each other. Because what happens is that this allocation of our time is built up of like 4 or 5 small, separate, sensible feeling choices are made. It's kind of like the same way in our paper here. A safe gain and a risky loss each felt sensible on their own. And then when you add it up once the decision is made, you're like, oh shit, they actually were the worst decisions because they were made after each other. So I am usually one person that fights against calendars because I think calendars take so much of spontaneity out of life. It's one of my pet peeves, even though I use them every single day. But I think this is a point to calendar people, because if you had to actually put in the time blocks and make the decision beforehand to be like, okay, email 1 minute, 40 minutes Instagram on the calendar. You see it there before you actually make the decision. I think I would make very different decisions because there's a combination that happens there. And then the question is, would you actually agree to that deal? And the answer is probably not. But in life, we can't do that. Decisions, there's a temporal aspect to how we live our lives. In order to move on to the next thing, you make a decision. You don't know all of the things in advance. And that's where it makes this kind of tricky. And I have no answers onto how to do this better. But I guess noticing things as separate entities versus a combined result, maybe that's something. But I think that's actually really hard to do in real life. And I know I stretched this a little bit because sometimes when you click on your email, you can choose not to go on Instagram. So there is an element of being sucked into this app a little bit that I said that I wasn't avoiding. But yeah, it's not a perfect mapping, but I think it kind of showcases two decisions that when you combine them change things. Because if you chose not to look at that email now and you said, I'll look at it tonight in the evening or whatever, or I'll look at it on my computer, you might not have made the same second decision of opening Instagram. That's what I was trying to look at. I don't know if it maps perfectly, but I don't know. I guess I just get stuck down these things and I wanted to try and understand it a little bit more. And I found this paper and it was quite interesting. Anyway, take you on the next one.